Hey there, today I'm giving you guys an in-depth sneak peek of the brand new Western Motors Leviathan, which I personally think is the best Western yet. You can get the Leviathan as a full battery electric vehicle, or you can get it as a hydrogen fuel cell in battery powered combination, like on the Hyundai N74 concept. It also happens to be the first hydrogen powered car in Greenville since the Mirai was removed several months ago. Anyways, I'm going to quickly go over each trim since they're all different. I'll show you their sounds and lighting, and I'll tell you which trim you should buy once they come out. So, like I just said, each trim has different horsepower and torque figures, so they all have slightly different acceleration. This red one here is the single motor E2MS, and despite it having nearly 300 horsepower and a decent amount of torque, it is pretty heavy. And because of that, it is fairly sluggish. Handling is also pretty decent for the class, and it's overall fairly fun to drive. They all pretty much have the same handling and cornering characteristics I've found, so I won't be talking about that anymore. However, this trim is the dual motor E2MS Quaddrive, which adds 40 horsepower and 85 pound-feet of torque, which makes quite a big difference. In my opinion, if you're just wanting a nice, simple to drive EV crossover for roleplay servers or daily driving, this is the trim to get, as it's quick enough and is definitely more fun to drive than the base model. And finally, this is the most expensive and quickest EV trim you can buy, which is the dual motor E2MX Quaddrive. And yes, besides some cosmetic enhancements over the E2MS, it adds 30 more horsepower and 40 pound-feet of torque. While it may not be the flat-out performance trim some people might be expecting, it is still very quick, and it's surprisingly fun to toss around corners. Now moving on to the hydrogen power trims, this is essentially the base model, which is the single motor H2MS Hydrive. The fuel cell gives you 100 more horsepower and torque over the E2MS, but it also costs $20,000 more. Despite that, it is a really noticeable change, as it is almost as quick as the top trim EV. This really nice shade of cheddar yellow here is the H2MS Hydrive+Quaddrive. Something I've always liked about Westerns is how adventurous they are with their color choices. They usually have a lot of nice options like this really unique yellow here. This is the most efficient Leviathan you can buy, as it gets nearly 500 miles of range on a single fill-up. And despite it having both lithium batteries and a fuel cell, it can only be filled up at a hydrogen station. Although I can't actually show you that since I don't own it. Anyways, I'm not sure about torque specifics, but the fuel cell adds 100 kilowatts or 134 horsepower over the regular E2MS Quaddrive, making it extremely quick and fun to drive. And finally, this is the top of the line Leviathan, in my opinion, the best trim you can buy. This is the H2MX Quaddrive+Hydrive, and this one comes in my favorite color scheme out of any fictional car. It is essentially the performance trim, as it has nearly 500 horsepower and 550 pound-feet of torque. It is the most fun to drive by far, although handling is just as okay as the other trims, but it is just unusually fun to throw around for an electric crossover. Since they all drive the same, maneuverability is the same for every single trim. That being said though, it has an extremely narrow turning radius for its size. Braking is also excellent. Although this isn't on my usual setting, it stops pretty quickly. Anyways, now it's time for a short montage on how its AEB performs. As you can see, its AEB is extremely sensitive. That last AEB test was just experimental and doesn't really count because I don't think any car can avoid that. Anyways, thank you very much to my test dummies Cicada X1 and 082B. Now I'm going to quickly show you the differences between the trims, then I'll turn off the music to let you hear how it sounds and what the lighting looks like. Then I'm going to give the Leviathan a FRIZZ score, show all of its stats, and I'll tell you which one you should be spending your money on when it comes out. So looking at the E2MS here, the only thing that differentiates it from the other EVs is the lack of a sunroof as well as no fender reflector lights. Some people expressed concern over those fender lights, but I really think they're unique and fit the design well. Moving on to this blackish blue one here, you get the same nice chrome trim all around it as well as the same plastic cladding. On the E2MS, you also get the addition of this nice pano sunroof and the neat fender lights. Moving on to the top trim EV here, this is the most you can spend on a full EV Leviathan. There really isn't much of a difference between it and the E2MS cosmetically, but you do get a black roof. Now moving on to the hydrogen trims, you can clearly tell them apart from the EVs since they have this little grille inlet and the high beams are placed in a different spot. Since it's a base model, you also don't get the fender lights or a sunroof. Moving on to the cheddar one here, it becomes clear that the hydro trims have body-colored cladding unlike the EVs, which looks really good on this corn casserole colored car. You get the addition of a panoramic sunroof as well as the fender reflectors. Besides that, they're pretty unchanged. And finally, moving on to this gorgeous bleen and white one here, you get the addition of this white roof and mirror caps, which I'm still awestruck over. Now that that's over, now it's time to give the Leviathans FRIZZ scores. I'll quickly display all their known stats and I'll tell you which one you should buy. And the FRIZZ scores are here with the H2MX at the very top and the base trim at the bottom. There's literally a Leviathan for every type of EV enthusiast in Greenville. If you're looking for a bare bones EV to drive around casually in, go with the H2MS or the E2MS. And if you're going for what I personally think is the all-around best example of this car, go for the H2MX or the H2MS and the E2MX. You really can't go wrong with any of these though. Bluezilla and DeLorean did an amazing job designing this, and I frankly can't wait to see what they have in store for the future. Whether it be for a fictional brand or for fictionalized versions of cars, there really seems to be a lot of interesting ideas ahead, and I'm truly excited for it. As always, thank you guys so much for tuning in, and especially thank you Hunter for making this video happen. I'm extremely excited to make content again, so stay tuned for future videos. Bye!